Hey lads, anyway, this is actually my first official video for this channel. It's actually one I've been wanting to do for a long time. I made a video about 5 years which got a copyright claim, and my college videos which I will actually upload once I have my results done. So anyway, this is just mainly to do with my books, like, the thing I'll be focused on today is actually my Mafia books, which take up a large portion of my bookshelf on the left side there, like, so basically I've been into Mafia books for a long time, ever since I was about 13, 14, like, and I have a lot of them, and just want to talk about them, and I just kind of show you what I like about them, and so we'll kind of go into more detail anyway now, so let's get right to it. So basically we're going to get started here with the Iceman, Confessions of a Mafia Contract Killer. This is basically about a Polish killer. His name is Richard Kuklinski, and he claims to have killed over 200 people, including some of the most high-profile mafia hits in New York in the past 50 years. So he claims to have killed Carmine Galante, Paul Castellano, Jimmy Hoffa, and Roy DeMeo. Now this is a book which I really I'm kind of very apprehensive about. It's very well written, and the character himself is rather interesting anyway. But the main problem I have with it is that the writer, Philip Carlo, he doesn't take any of the information at all with any grain of salt. Like, he just takes what Kuklinski says as factual all the time, and Kuklinski is a compulsive liar. Like, there's not a hope in hell that he would have ever been involved in half of the hits that he says he did. In fact, 200 hits is a bit out of this world as well. Like, he probably killed, I'd say, about 10 people max, and maybe a couple for the mafia, but highly unlikely. Like, the high profile hits that he'd never be involved in. Like, Paul Castellano was so secretive, and like the mafia is such a secretive organisation. Why would they get a 6'5", 300-pound Polish person who they can't trust to take a hit on a mafia boss? Like, so it's kind of crazy. So, and it's very repetitive as well. Like, I can't count how many times his wife is mentioned as fearing him, or he kills a sidewalker out in one seeing him. So, it's interesting anyway, but I give it a read. Sure, why not? Next one here we have is Wise Guy by Nicholas Pileggi, Goodfellas. It's kind of a bit torn here, I got a bit of drink on it, but another interesting book anyway, like, but I got this for Christmas, and unlike Casino anyway, like, if you've seen the film Goodfellas, you've basically read Wise Guy. There's not a whole pile else to it anyway, like, but definitely is interesting. It's written with a lot of attitude, and Henry Hill is a rather interesting character. So is what's his name? Rob De Niro's character. I actually lost his name now. Jimmy Burke, actually, and he's actually very interesting. And still, Fonza Heist is always interesting, like, but yeah, I'd definitely give it a read if you haven't seen Goodfellas. If you have, maybe give it a miss, but it would be interesting to have your collection. Casino, now it's Nicholas Pileggi as well, and this is another rather interesting one. Love and Las Vegas. Las Vegas is part of the mafia. Always interests me an awful amount, like, just more so than anything else, like Joe Bugsy Siegel and all the others. Unlike the film, this actually has lots of differences in it, and it's kind of more of a read to it. Like, the character of Philip Green, played by Kevin Pollak in the film, he's probably one of the most interesting characters in the book. Like, but it's fairly interesting. But unlike the film, I really don't get the impression that these characters were as important to Las Vegas as it's made out. Like, they just seem to be two mafia boys in charge of a casino and just kind of doing all the heists, but you never really get the feeling that it's as important as like the film, as how they say it is, and how it all collapses because of them and underneath them. But once again, it's interesting, and you get to learn a lot about skimming and bookkeeping and all kind of the scams and everything like Joe they used to pull off, which is all very interesting. So I'd probably recommend reading this over Wise Guy, but then again, I prefer Casino, so to make of that what you will. Mafia, this is basically just a very generalised book I got in Easton's once. Like, look at the size of it, it pretty much has the entire Mafia history condensed down into this, so it's pretty confusing, very, very tight, like, not very well edited, like, there's far too much going on, especially in Sicily, which always interests me as well, like, but there's a few facts here I'd be a bit iffy about, like, mainly to do with the war in the 1930s, Maranzano, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's fine. It has the French Connection, which is always interesting as well, like, but if you ever a Mafia books, this one, wouldn't really recommend it, to be honest. Gotti, it's to do with our best friend, the flamboyant John Gotti, the man who pretty much brought down the mafia. So, again, another interesting read. It's kind of divided into parts in a way, which I like. I always like his kind of grown up to do with kind of Angelo Gero and the formation of Fist to bring down Paul Castellano. That's, once again, is always interesting to me. But once he becomes the boss, it kind of loses interest after a few assassination attempts with, what's his face, Gaspipe. That's kind of lost a bit of interest in me. It kind of got interesting towards the end with his trial and with Samuel Bulgravano. But once again, it's written by the two main boys, what are they called? Jerry Capisci and Gene Mustaine, who also did Murder Machine, which I'll get to later. But it's very well researched, very well written, and if you're interested in more modern mafia and how the actual mafia in New York really did die with Gotti, it's an interesting read. Donnie Brasco, that's another very interesting one. The FBI agent who was with the mafia for a good time, about 15 years, I think it was. Yeah, no, not 15, 5 years, what am I saying? But if you've seen the film as well, like Joe, I think the book is way more interesting. There seems to be much more at stake, much more kind of personal. There's a lot more characters involved, like, but it just kind of dies down really on like the film, which kind of had a conclusion. But it's interesting, like in the film, the Al Pacino character, Lefty Ruggiero, he kind of seems to have more of a friendship with Spistone. But in the book, it's actually Sonny Black who seems to have more of a relationship with. He gives out about Lefty a lot of the time. But like I said, it's written with attitude anyway. Like, it's very interesting to get a federal perspective on the mafia to see how all the going-ons. So once again, this is one I'd recommend. LA Noir. I haven't actually read all this. I've read bits of it. I only got it recently. But Mob City, I wouldn't recommend it. But it's kind of interesting. It has to do with Mickey Cohen and kind of Bugsy Siegel, Las Vegas, and all the kind of police activity to bring them down. But it seems interesting enough from what I've read already. Like, LA never really interests me as much as the East Coast, so to speak. But Mob City, the space on it, it's a bit interesting, but I certainly would not recommend Gangster Squad. That's horseshit. Don't watch it at all. Okay, so I'll move on to much. And the Valachi Papers, this was very interesting. Like, Joe Valachi was the first person who publicly acknowledged the existence of the mafia in court in the 60s. And it's kind of very interesting. Has lots to do with the 30s, a lot of famous faces: Maranzano, Masseria, Charlie Luciano, Meyer Lansky, who else? Vito Genovese, he was a big part of that, like, but I can't even pronounce it. The Castle Lamerace War, how we pronounce it. There's gets lots of information, which I've always really liked. Kind of the formation of the commission, all that kind of stuff. Appellations involved a lot. So basically, from the 30s to the 50s, gets a lot of information. So this is one. It's a nice short read. I read it on the plane once to Germany, but it's good really. Like, it's very interesting. Film, wouldn't recommend it. With what's his face, Charles Bronson. Murder Machine. This is where we kind of really get into nitty gritty details. No, G. Mustaine, Jerry Capisci, and it's a very interesting book. Let's see. We've on the back there. We've got one of the Gemini Killers, Chris Rosenberg and Roy DeMeo, and like these characters are absolutely brutal. It's so interesting to read about them. Like, the amount of people they killed and how they killed them. It was insane. John Gotti was even afraid of them. But all that stuff was interesting. The main character, the informer, they got Dominic, whatever his name is, the nephew of Nino Gaggi. He's not a very interesting character. He's just a bit of a bit of a yuppie, kind of a bit of a loose cannon, like, not interesting. But it's definitely one I'd recommend. Like, very interesting characters. Like, kind of with the Gemini Lounge, all that kind of stuff. Like, how many people died there? It's insane, really. And that's a few of the famous faces anyway. But yeah, it's very recommendable anyway. Yeah, Murder Inc. This is another good one I got a couple of years ago. It's basically to do with Murder Incorporated, which was the syndicate, kind of hit squad back in the 30s and 40s. The syndicate, if you don't know, that's kind of not exactly the mafia. It kind of is, how would I say? No, that kind of involves Jewish, Irish mobsters, everything like so. Dutch Schultz is in this. Luciano Lansky, what's his face? Albert Anastasia was actually my personal favourite. I think the most interested. Leppy Buckwalter, Bugsy Siegel, Joe Adenese, and many others. So kind of to do a lot with a lot of trials as well. Like, the first mafia lads who ever actually were put to death in New York, and yeah, it kind of does a lot with Dutch Schultz. Like, the prosecutor, Dewey, who was always interesting, and yes, remember this and. Kid Twist, the canary who could fly. No, the cleric who could sing but couldn't fly. It's always interesting. A lot of good theories about that because this was written back in the 50s, so according to this, Albert Einstein is still alive, so it is outdated, but it still is a very interesting read of the time to do with people who are very deeply involved with the case and everything. Capone, big man himself, Scarface, Al Capone. So this is another kind of interesting one, like, kind of starts off a bit slow and, but move the camera there so much. But it is well written. There's a lot to do with the St. Valentine's Day massacre, all the other wars here with Jaime Weiss, Dino Benyon, and Johnny Torrio, all that kind of stuff, Frank Nitti. But one thing I do like is that the writer himself acknowledges that Elliot Ness, the Untouchables, their role in bringing up Capone was actually really minimum. It was more, they're more figureheads really, like, you know. So if the Untouchables, the film, was truthful, there would be tours of people doing tax returns and tax reports, all that kind of crap, like, you know. So, but it kind of translates better into a book than it does a film, like, you know. So Frank Nitti does not die, but Elliot Ness's hand. Well, that's interesting. Get to know the character a lot. I'm surprised how many hits was actually ordered on him and he survived, like, you know. But interesting to see his time in Alcatraz, the syphilis, everything that affected him. But another interesting character, another flamboyant character. I'll talk about flamboyant Jimmy Hoffa, the big man himself, like, you know, the union guy. This is one actually I haven't read when I got to Christmas, but I've been had other things to read. I've been busy as well, like, you know. But he is actually a very interesting character, a union guy who basically got him too deeply involved and disappeared for years. And of course he's dead anyway, like, you know, but can't really talk too much about this, like, you know. If you're interested in kind of like the labour formation, the Teamsters, what have you, it's kind of a bit more interesting. 5 families, this is basically the kind of be all end all. Kind of to do with 5 families: Bonanno, Colombo, Genovese, Lucchese, and Gambino, of course. This is very tight when looking, it's massive, like, you know, but it doesn't really involve much of the early stuff. It all has to do with Gotti and Joe the 80s and all that kind of stuff, which never really interested me much as the early days in the Mafia, like, you know. So, but again, like, you know, it's pretty comprehensive. It has almost everything involved. It's dear enough, it'll cost you about 30 quid online, but if you're really interested, I'll give it a read anyway. So that's pretty much it for my kind of true story Mafia books. If I were to recommend some of them, like, I'd recommend Murder Machine and Murder Inc. If you're starting off, you don't know that, it's probably 5 families, if you can pay for it. As you can see here, I have a lot of other books, which I may or may not talk about in a future date, kind of depends if I'm busy or not. But I'll zoom in here. See, I'm a big fan of Michael Connolly. I might talk about him at some time. Actually, the book down there, The Black Echo, actually, I personally signed by him. Thanks, Claire. And a lot of other crime books here, like, you know, The Godfather, True Confessions, Fallen Angel, all that kind of stuff, which I'd recommend. But I may talk about them at a later date. For now, I'll leave it at that anyway. So thanks for watching, and if I make any more videos, I'll catch you later. I'm going to put up my college stuff in a couple of weeks' time, so that is pretty much it. Bye for now.